Hello, welcome to Herdstone Painting. My name is Mark, and today we have finally finished, after all of these weeks, a unit or a team or something. I've been working in the background in between editing and filming the sort of painting tutorials and doing these reels. I've been trying to chip away at some of these larger projects that I've kind of cut out for myself. So today we're going to review the Tomb King Blood Bowl team, or in my case the Sunstroke Saboteurs, as I've affectionately called them. We're going to go through each positional piece, starting with the skeleton lineman first. So I thought I'd grab the Spike magazine as well, so we're going to have a little look through the roster. I mean, these books are great if anybody's into just silly writing, pastiche combination of sport and fantasy, then these things are great, even if you don't like playing Blood Bowl. I think for £15, whatever these are, they are hilarious. I haven't had much chance to read through all of it yet, but there's always some silly stuff going on. So worth a good look if you've never had a chance to at least read through one. What I thought I'd do is I'll go through the roster. I want to go through kind of what each positional does in the game, as well as how they were to paint. But we'll start off at the very top with the skeleton lineman. Now, there is 14 positionals in this box, and I believe it's 6 of them are linemen. So you've got quite a lot of skeleton linemen. I do feel like, annoyingly, you will probably need a few more than what's in the box set, but we'll get into that in a minute. So we do have the 6 guys here. Just going to move my microphone. So there's sort of 3 sculpts, and then they're all slightly different. So we've got 2 guys kind of leaning forward a little bit, almost like they're getting ready to block, but I've gone in and adjusted their heads here, so I've altered some of the heads around, which is the only real thing you can do on these positionals. So it's got different faces instead of anything else. So there are 6 of these, 2 crouching like this. There's another one with his hand out, looking like he's putting something into the dirt. Again, alternate wise, the only way to really make these different is to change the heads. There's no other alternatives on these 2 pieces. And then we've got the last sculpt, which is a bit more of a who's that over there type sculpt. Again, no alternatives for this one, only the heads, which I've swapped around. I don't even think it tells you to do that in the building guide, so I'd recommend just building one sprue with the heads it recommends and then just offsetting it 1, so you've got 6 different skeletons effectively. I think you're probably going to want some more of these if you were going to be in a league, just because it's possible that your team falls apart a little bit, and I'll get into that in a minute. So painting these guys, I mean, we did a painting tutorial for the Blitzer, but all the same rules applied to the skeletons. I think they're actually fairly straightforward, but I think the running theme for a lot of these guys is going to be the gold. Of course, we painted them with a white armor. You guys may paint yours in different colors, and you should absolutely do so. Everybody needs their team to be independent. Of course, just shout in the comments if you want to come up with a recipe for a blue or a green or something. Just let us know and we can put our heads together and come up with something. But we went all white, which is a bit controversial because usually Tomb Kings will be like turquoise and red, but it's really striking because that yellowy gold is so intense. I just wanted something to sort of just bounce off it that wasn't too colourful. And I had an idea for this team for a long time. I won't go into the history as to why, but the Sunstroke Saboteurs met a grisly end, and these guys have been waiting for models for a long time. So skeleton linemen, cost-wise, 40,000 gold pieces. They're only movement 5, strength 3, which is pretty standard. They do have an agility of 4+, passing 6+, and armor 8+. So they're not great at picking up the ball. They're not good at dodging. What they do have is regeneration and fixed skulls, so they're likely to stick around, even though the armor can get broken quite easily. I think that that fixed skull will keep them on more often than not. And then the regen will give them that 50-50 chance of completely ignoring an injury anyway. So these are they're your linemen, right? They're going to take the hits, they're going to take the punishment, and they're fairly replaceable. But I do feel like if the rest of your team starts to suffer, you're going to need more than 6 of these guys. And I think they're different enough, and I think the fact that with Tomb Kings, the miniatures all looking very similar kind of suits them, because they are supposed to be, an army that had been hidden under the sands. In this case, a team that's been hidden under the sands. Little details I like. I love the scarabs crawling all over these models. We've done them pretty rapidly. So we've just kind of painted them silver and then washed it with a bit of tie-around blue to make them pop a little bit. But they're pretty straightforward. But those little details are nice. Again, the gold is really difficult. But really, other than that, they're fairly straightforward to paint. It's just that taking your time on the gold is the real big thing here. It makes a huge difference. So that's the skeleton linemen. They were a lot of fun. Now, moving on to the throwers. So you can have 0 to 2 throwers. Again, there's one on each sprue. So they are identical. And I don't think I even did anything to create much variation. I think I maybe have just adjusted the arms slightly to give them something on their left arm. But other than that, there's no variation in the sprue. And I think that's what these 14, or the 7, let's call it 7 on a sprue team suffer from. Is they suffer from that issue. They've only got a limited amount of space on said sprue, so they can't really have many alternate versions or alternate heads. So unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with what you've got. And what they did give alternates for are for the Tomb Guardians, which are the main part of the team. So yeah, these guys are very standard. So again, all the rules applied. We painted this in the Blitzer video, and all of that works on these guys. And there's a few extra details here. There's a few more bits of armor. The helmet is a little bit more complex, but I think it looks really nice. That's the only real thing that differentiates it from above to the others. I mean, you know he's the thrower because he's got the ball in his hand. It's a shame the ball's not a little bit more Tomb King themed. It seems like it's just the bog standard pigskin. And also his feet, he's got some little wings on there as well to differentiate him. So he's clearly very obviously different to one of these guys. So that helps a lot. Other than that, I believe painting wise, there was a few extra bits. There was a little towel that I wanted to paint a different colour. The loincloths were a little bit more, I guess they were more ornate than the ones on the skeleton warriors, so they suited being a little bit more clean. But other than that, it's just the gold again, taking your time on that gold, and there's a little bit more on this, so it's a little bit more painful to do. But in terms of the rules for the Tomb King thrower, so these are one of the more important positionals in the team. The linemen are just throwaway, really. I mean, you need them, but they're just there to take the hits. But the Tomb King thrower, 65,000 gold. He's movement 6, which is pretty handy for a thrower, pretty standard. Strength of 3, agility 4+ again, so he's only picking up the ball on a 4+, but we'll get into what can be quite helpful for him here. And then passing 3+, which is pretty standard for a thrower. Armor 9+, so that extra armor is reflected here in comparison to the skeletons. But he does also have thick skull, so he's going to be a little bit harder to get out on the armor, and he's also a little bit harder to get out off the pitch if that armor is broken. Sure Hands is going to help him pick up. Pass is going to give him that reroll, and then the regeneration is going to hopefully keep him around 50-50 or 50% of the time. Now, of course, you've got the secure the ball action in Blood Bowl now, which is obviously really good for Tomb Kings. Normally it was 4+ with a reroll, which averages at about 3+-ish on one dice, so it's 50-50 on both, but it works out at about 2/3 of the time you're going to pick it up. But, you know, when it was raining or God knows what else was going on, Tomb Kings really suffered. Yeah, it just was already hard enough as it is. So this secure the ball action means that if there's nobody around within 3 squares or 2 squares, I can't remember now, they can just run in and pick it up on a 2+. I can't remember if you can use sure hands on that pickup. I'll have to check that out. I don't think you can, but it's a 2+. I think you can use a team reroll. So still, if you're in a bind and you need to run in and pick up the ball, sure hands is still pretty useful. And then if you just need to run in and then cancel your action, run into the front of the cage or in the middle of the cage, then the pickup, the guarded pickup, whatever it's called, secure the ball, apologies, is also really useful for the Tomb Kings. So these guys are your ball retrievers, and more often than not, they hog all the SPP, which is a bit of a problem with this team, because they just can't give it to anybody else to score. It's just a bit too risky. But, you know, if you've got enough rerolls and you've got the faith in Nuffle, why not give it a go? All right, moving down to the next one, the Blitzers. Okay, the Blitzers. Now, this is the guy we painted on the channel. I don't remember which one it was. Maybe it was number 2. Regardless. Now, obviously, again, there's not a lot of alternation going on here. I think I adjusted the neck a little bit so that I could get the head angled in a different way. As I said, I'm not too fussed with Blood Bowl models if they're the same. I actually think it's quite helpful when you play the game because it really is a board game. So the fact that the models are identical isn't always a bad thing, but it would have been nice to have some alternation going on. In the skeleton models, as explained in the thrower, I think that there's some obvious reasons as to why they couldn't fit more pieces on. Now this guy again is a little bit more ornate. He's got a little bit more armor than the thrower, and he's got a huge crest on his chest, which just looks awesome. So he's definitely the most awesome model. He's got Anubis on his head as well, but really very much the same issues as the others. I did paint the red section here. So this is a little bit of an error on my side. I painted the red element on his left arm there, assuming the other models had something similar on them. And I think in the previous video I discussed, that's some kind of binding to make this team play for a specific hierophant or something. But I realised later on that wasn't really possible. So a bit of an error on my side, not looking through the team in advance. But yeah, generally again, painting wise, there's a lot less white to deal with, but then you have to suffer more with the gold. But the helmet just looks awesome, and that's really the only differentiation, is that helmet to the other models. It's a little bit more obviously ornate, and it's not as splayed as the thrower is, so it's a little bit more, I would say this helmet's a bit more showy. Hello, I'm the quarterback, and this guy's a bit more, I'm gonna hit you in the face kind of helmet, really. So he's also a lot more beaten up than the others, so when you're actually painting this guy, you'll notice he's been bandaged together a lot. There's lots of little bandages all around his chest cavity and his ribs. He's got holes in him, so he's been beaten the hell out of, and he doesn't have any scarabs on him. That's the only thing he's missing. He's clearly too nasty and savage to have any scarabs there. So that's the Blitzers. I think of all the skeletons, the prettiest of the lot. But again, doesn't really differentiate very much when you start to put them all together. I think players will get confused. Is that a skeleton warrior? A lineman, or is that a blitzer? So yeah, not completely obvious, especially from the back. But from the front, maybe a little bit more clear. So Tomb King Blitzer, just like the thrower, he's your ball retriever. This guy's going to be your utility piece. He's going to be the guy who you're relying on for the blocks that need to happen, especially early in the league. And he's also your sweeper, so in defense, he's going to be the guy who's going to be able to get to places and hopefully stop the score. So he is 85,000 gold, so he's 20k more than the thrower. Movement 6 as well, so he's just as fast as the thrower, so pretty zippy for a skeleton. Strength 3, agility 4+ once again, so none of this team's going to be dodging out reliably. Passing 5+, so he's better than the lineman. I thought they might be the same passing, to be honest, but he, in a real bind, could pass the ball at least a quick or short distance, potentially, if you've got no other options. Armor value 9+, so he is a little bit more durable than the lineman. Now, the skills are the most important thing. He has the thick skull as well, so his armor's harder, and he's also harder to get off the pitch, which is helpful. But block is the key one here. Block is just, of course, one of the most powerful skills in the game, so having two positionals that don't have any loner skills or nega traits, who can just run around and just hit stuff, especially early on, they're going to be running in and smashing things into the ground 2 times out of 6 on any single dice, so they become much more reliable. However, the opportunities for them to get SPP from scoring is tough, so they can only really get it from punching stuff and then the odd touchdown in situations where they've managed to pick the ball up or it's landed on them fortuitously. So leveling these guys up is going to be difficult if you can't break armor. If you're in a league full of really nasty, strong teams, these guys are going to really suffer. They're not going to get much SPP. And they're a target, so they're very likely to get their head caved in. But the regeneration, again, like the other two players, I apologise, positionals, will at least keep them alive 50% of the time. So, again, Blitzers, superstar positional for this team. They are your utility piece, so keep them safe and pray they get lots of casualties. So, moving on now to the big guys, or the centerpiece of this team. Alright, the Tomb Guardians. So there's 4 of these guys, and this is in terms of painting and modelling, these guys are, clearly larger than their skeleton buddies. So, do they look like they're strength 5 or not? I don't know. They feel like they're more like a strength 4 positional size-wise, but when you think about the old Shambling Undead team, the mummies in that were similar sized, and the fact that there's 14 players in this team, I guess there's only a limit to how big they can go. And at the end of the day, the base is only so big, so they're obviously larger, and they do have some variations. So this is the only positional where there is actually variable pieces. Obviously, in the skeleton lineman, I've moved the helmets around, so there's at least some variation in the positions. But there are 2 sculpts. So here are 2 of them with the varied pieces. You've got different helmet. That's it. But it's noticeably different. I believe it's just the helmet. Yeah, and again, these guys have the scarabs on them. So painting these guys was a bit different. So the armor and all the shorts and everything else was very much the same. But there was obviously all those bandages. So I have released at this point a video painting these guys because I thought they were different enough for them to deserve their own video. But yeah, the bandages are really difficult. I like to try and paint everything, but I think in reality, I tried to start doing that with number 6, this guy, and I started to try and paint the bandages in and realised that was just punishment. It was brutal. So I think dry brushing everything first is just the easiest way to do them, and it actually does look better. These guys are all dry brushed. It looks a bit muckier, a little bit dirtier, like it should be, right? And then you can paint around it. It does make it a bit more fiddly because you've got there's bandages everywhere. It's just very hard to know what order to paint them in. So the bandages were tough because they make everything else more difficult to do. Does that make sense? And then the gold on these guys was brutal because you've done so much effort painting them. You just don't want to get that gold everywhere, and then trying to clean it up, if you do, is tough because them gold flecks can just get everywhere. But yeah, painting the bandages was nice and easy, but then painting around them tough. And then the amount of time I spent on the gold on these guys felt like it was longer than the gold on the rest of the team. There's just so much of it. Their white socks are fun. I was umming and ahhing about doing them a different colour, but I think that the white stands out enough against the bandages to keep it fresh. And this is the other sculpt. So this is the other side of it, and there are actually 2 different things on this one. You've got 2 different heads, which is cool, and then you've also got a different fist. The right fist can be changed, so they really are trying to squeeze in as much variation as they possibly can. But there's only so much real estate on them frames, or sprues, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, I think they've done a pretty good job on these guys. Now, I don't know, I thought that these guys might be turned into something called a Shabti, which in Warhammer the Old World are like statues that move and fight, and they're kind of based on Anubis and Ra and all those kind of things. I think they're great ideas, the Ushabti. I thought Tomb Guardians might become, rather than them being mummies, I thought they might become Ushabtis. So it's a bit of a shame. I was expecting them to be a little bit more like that rather than like this. But it is what it is. Maybe there'll be some kind of cool star player that comes out for the Tomb Kings in the future that is an Ushabti model or something. I think it's a great little idea for a future piece. But that's the team painting and modelling wise. I think because they're so scaled up, I think they're a little bit more cartoony than the skeletons, personally. Not a huge amount more cartoony, but they do seem a bit more over the top. The skeletons look, I mean, how realistic can a skeleton walking around B, really, but you know, they look like they could have crawled out the ground, whereas these guys are a little bit more sort of Hammer horror, almost a bit more like the necromantic team, I think. So Tomb Guardians are probably one of the main reasons people pick up Tomb Kings and want to play them over the years. The idea of having 4 big strength 5 dudes on the line of scrimmage that do not have a nega trait. Well, they do, but we'll get into that in a minute. They don't have like a nega trait that stops them using rerolls anyway. It's just really appealing to a lot of players. And I've always wanted to try them, and I've always been waiting for this team to come out. So maybe this will be a DBL team this year. We'll see if we get Bretonians done. But let's go for it. So Tomb Guardians, you can have 0 to 4. And all 4 come in the team box set, which is really useful. Really useful. They're 115,000 gold pieces. So once you get all 4 of these guys in, it's going to be tough to fit everything else in, I think. So their movement 4, so they are sluggish, but they're not as slow as the shambling undead mummies, which is interesting. Strength 5, their agility 5+, so of course they don't dodge away, they just smash their way through. Passing 6+, so the fact they can still pass now is interesting, of course, with this new addition. I mean, it'll be a rainy day in hell if you've got to pass with these guys, but you know, sometimes you've got to do what you got to do. Now, armor value 10+, that's massive, so they are much tougher than the rest of the team, but then they're lacking 2 skills that the rest of the team have. They do not have fixed skull, and they do not have regenerate. They do not have fixed skull, but they do have regeneration. Apologies. But instead of fixed skull, they've got decay. Now, decay used to be that you would add 1 to the D16. I'll need when you actually get injured, but I'll have to check it if that's still the same. But effectively, decay means they are, if they do get hurt, or if their armor's broken, then they do get hurt, which is tough. Someone needs to roll a 10+, and then they need to roll a 9+, ignoring Mighty Blow, which is pretty brutal, pretty tough to do on 2 rolls. And then they need to roll a D16. Whatever that D16 is, I think is affected by decay. I'll check it out, and I'll maybe add it into the comments after the video's posted. But even though they're nails and they're hard to beat, if you are unlucky, you could lose 1 or 2 of these in a game. Especially if there's claw running around or Mighty Blow all over the place. You know, a couple unfortunate dice rolls and your team can just be missing its heart, basically. So a bit of a double-edged sword, these guys. Should be okay, but there's always going to be that time or that game where you lose 1 or 2. So yeah, regeneration, fab, decay, not fab. That's like a mini nega trait, more for your season as opposed to like in the game, but anyway. And then brawler means you can reroll a block dice when blocking, which is awesome. Of course, these guys don't have block, so even though you have rerolls and you can use them if you have them with these guys without having to worry about loner, brawler is just a little bit of a backup. It's one of those where if you roll a push and a both down, you probably reroll the both down and go with that result. If you've rolled a skull and a both down, you're probably thinking, let's try a actual reroll rather than using brawler. But a tasty little skill means you might get the odd extra power here and there, which is important because you want to try and get as many casualties as possible with these guys. And a bit like the Blitzers, that's probably the only way they're going to get SPP. They're unlikely to do anything else, so you got to hope that your guys on the line can just whack and whack until eventually they get enough SPP to get block, probably. I think you still want block, or you want Mighty Blow. In a shorter league, maybe Mighty Blow's the key because it means you're going to get more SPP quicker. Because that's one thing they're missing. They don't have that brutality. They can't smash things into the ground as easily. So you're relying on high dice. You're relying on hitting teams that are weaker than you. But yeah, 4 of them on the line. If you're really good with your positioning on the line of scrimmage, man, this team is just so hard to get through, especially on defense. You just can't break through it if these Tomb Guardians keep blocking themselves into the right places. Yeah, it's tough for any team to get through. So before we get into the final shots of the team, we've got a few extra markers and pieces to look at as well. Finally, the team comes with a few extra pieces. Now, I haven't painted the balls. I couldn't be bothered. Sorry. I just don't use them at all in games. I normally use the kind of ball tokens that all these different leagues create and make. So I find the balls a bit really tricky to paint. They're so fiddly. But I do love the markers. Some folks don't bother with these either, but these ones are a lot of fun. We posted the video of us painting these and the coins. It's basically like a little casket of souls, a little nod to the Warhammer Fantasy unit. We painted these pretty rapidly. We didn't spend as much time as we might do on a team piece. So these are your score markers or turn markers or whatever you want to use them for, really, to be honest. Two are the same, there's no variation. So I've just painted them as similarly as possible. And then finally, there is the coins, which I'll tend to use as reroll markers. I'll tend to flip them over once it's done. You can use it for a coin toss, but I don't think they're particularly weighted fairly, so I don't think anybody in their right mind would want you to do that. But these are pretty nice, pretty simple. Some of these coins over the years have been very, very difficult, whereas these were just a bit more straightforward. The backside, like it always is, very nice, very straightforward. The tails, and then this front side's just very much a classic Tomb King insignia piece. Again, the gold was the vast majority of this, and I talk about how to paint these in the painting tutorial, but painting them on the sprue is really fiddly when you've already cut everything else off. So you could do that, but I'll tend to just blue tack them down to this side, onto a painting handle, paint one side, varnish the whole thing, let it dry for a couple hours, and then when you're confident to switch it over, just gently press it down on the blue tack this way, and then paint the backside. Can sometimes vary a little bit in how you finish the gold, but at the end of the day, these are just tokens. You want the team to look awesome, really, not this extra paraphernalia. So that's all of the Tomb King team. I'm going to do some quick, awesome shots of these guys now, and then we'll wrap this up. There you go. What an amazing team. They were loads of fun to paint. I've been looking forward to this team for a long time, and it was nice to see it finally come to fruition, I guess, from Games Workshop. It wasn't always a team that I thought they may ever get around to be honest. Some of these later teams, it felt like they were always going to be last on the list, if not ever arrive. Of course, I'd like the big Tomb Guardians to have been a Shabty. I think it would have looked more striking, and it would have made it different to the other undead teams a little bit more, but hey ho. We go with what we've got. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. It's been a bit of a journey with these Blood Bowl videos. I feel like we've kind of focused on Blood Bowl quite a bit, which has been loads of fun for me. We'll be doing other bits and bobs, of course. We're still going to be focusing on the Old World and the Horus Heresy, and there'll be a new High Elf team soon too, so hopefully we'll be able to focus on those just as much as we have with the Tomb Kings. We do have a link bio in our description, which has a whole host of different links to our Patreon, the WhatsApp community, and everything else. We're sort of starting from scratch. There's not a lot of folks in there at the moment. I'd be interested to see what any of you guys think of the different levels, the prices, benefits, etc., and see if I can iron things out a little bit more to make it more amenable for people. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.